I never expected to find heart-stopping battles hidden in sleepy medieval tales. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was just an ordinary morning when the world turned upside down. Damp air clung to my skin, and whispers of danger echoed in the cobblestone streets. I was just a girl, with dreams of adventure that danced in my heart like flickering flames. But on that particular day, those dreams twisted into nightmares. As I wandered through the old town, the sun struggled to break through grey clouds. The smell of baked bread wafted through the air, warm and inviting, yet something sinister lurked beneath its comforting surface. My fingers trembled as I touched the woolen scarf wrapped tightly around my neck, and I felt it the pulse of something unsettling. The townsfolk had been acting differently, casting sideways glances, their whispers blending into a cacophony of fear. What were they hiding? My father, a humble blacksmith, had always told me stories of knights and dragons, of bravery and sacrifice, enchanting tales that made my heart soar. But now, those fantastical battles seemed mundane in comparison to the reality unfolding before me. My mother's voice, usually filled with warmth, was now thin with worry. She glanced toward the forest at the edge of town, the place where shadows danced and secrets lingered. There was something in those trees, something waiting. Then I saw him, Darian, my childhood friend, with fiery hair and a spirit that dared to challenge fate. He stood apart from the rest, eyes wide with revelation, breathing heavily as if he'd just ridden into battle. "They're coming," he gasped. My heart plummeted. His voice quaked with the kind of fear that slices through silence, and the gravity of his words crushed me. Who was coming? The stakes rose higher, something heavy weighing on my chest. Rumors had spread like wildfire, tales of a rival kingdom rising with bloodlust, hungry for our lands, our very souls. I could picture those knights, gleaming armor and wicked swords, shrouded in menace. A shiver ran down my spine. My heart raced, and yet, through the fear, a flicker of hope sparked. If I stood with my people, I could help in some way. As the day wore on, the tension thickened. I watched my father forge weapons, his hammer pounding against glowing metal, a steady rhythm against the backdrop of chaos unfolding outside. The clang echoed like a war drum. Determination surged within me, but so did the grasping cold of dread. Lives were at stake, comrades, friends, family. What would become of us? Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream shattered the air. It rippled through the town, silencing all. I stumbled back, heart racing, an icy knot tightening in my throat. The villagers turned toward the sound, fear etched on their faces. "No?" I gasped, my voice barely escaping. What had happened? As I rushed to the square, the world narrowed down to a blur of color and sound. The murmur of the crowd became a whirlwind of moans and cries. People were gathering, faces pale, eyes darting with panic. I squinted through the rising dust, desperation clawing at my insides. And that's when I saw him, a figure draped in shadow, standing defiantly at the edge of town, his silhouette framed against the setting sun. Who was he? What did he want? My heart pounded, every beat a reminder of the choices we had to make. I took a step forward, caught between fear and courage, but something primal pulled me back. What awaited us? What secrets would be unveiled in the moments to come? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure in the shadow, a dark silhouette against the fading light, seemed to emanate an aura that made the very air tremble. I intensely studied his form as if I could unravel the secrets hidden beneath the layers of darkness enveloping him. My pulse quickened, each beat hammering in sync with the chaos swirling around me. The villagers, their whispers morphing into cries of fear, cast trembling glances at the newcomer who dared disrupt our ordinary lives. Who goes there? My father's voice thundered through the crowd, breaking the silence that threatened to suffocate us. I turned to him, searching for strength in his fearless demeanor, but even he appeared unsettled. My parents' unwavering resolve suddenly felt fragile, like a thread hanging by a delicate weave. "My name is Cale," the stranger declared, his tone deep and sonorous, cutting through the din of frightened murmurs. "But I am not your enemy." He stepped forward, the fading sun catching glimmers of silver in his garments, revealing intricate embroidery that spoke of nobility. Instinctively, a part of me wanted to trust him, yet another part, fueled by all the tales of treachery that danced in my mind, warned me otherwise. "What do you want?" Darian shouted, his voice rising above the fearful whispers as he stepped beside me, his fiery hair like a beacon in the night. "Why have you come to our town?" "I come with a warning," Cale replied, his gaze piercing through the confusion. "The kingdom that threatens you will not stop at anything to claim what you hold dear. I seek an alliance, for the darkness that looms on the horizon craves more than your lands. It wants your very spirit." A hush fell over the townsfolk, their breaths held like the calm before a storm. The name of the rival kingdom rang in my ears, Nyreth. Tales of merciless warriors and sinister sorcery whispered through our town, and now, hearing it spoken aloud sent chills racing down my spine. I looked to my father, whose face had turned ashen, and I felt my own heart fracture, fear clawing at the edges of my mind. "An alliance?" Darian scoffed, breaking the silence and striking a small spark of rebellion in the moment. "How can we trust a man who arrives cloaked in shadows? You could be here to spy on us." Cale's expression remained steadfast, the creases in his brow deepening as determination eclipsed concern. "I understand your hesitation, but time is not our friend. The forces of Nyreth are more cunning than you know. They have spies in these very streets, watching, waiting for the moment to strike. If you refuse my help, you condemn your village to annihilation." The murmurs twisted and turned like a whispering wind, doubt wrestling with desperation in every heart. I could feel the clash of emotions. The villagers, once familiar faces, became a collective of worry and suspicion. Yet, within this storm of uncertainty, a small flicker of hope ignited within me. What if Cale was telling the truth? What if there was a way to fight back? "Does anyone else see the madness in this?" A woman's voice rang out, her features softened by fear. "How could we trust someone from another lord? Isn't it better to stand alone than to risk bringing more danger upon us?" I could see the division forming, a fracture in the unity we had always prided ourselves on. My throat tightened as a sensation of helplessness washed over me, a bitter reminder of how quickly we could tear each other apart in the face of fear. But deep down, I sensed that we were all clinging to the same hope to save our home. I stepped forward, my hands raised to silence the rising tension. "We need to listen to him. We can't simply ignore what's coming. If we arm ourselves with knowledge and allies, we'll have a fighting chance." My voice unexpectedly wavered as I spoke, but a spark ignited in Cale's eyes, as though he recognized the flicker of courage I was attempting to nurture in us. "Brave words," he said, nodding, "but bravery alone isn't enough. You must stand together, those who fight to protect their home. If you unite with me, I can teach your warriors the secrets of Nyreth. Magic can turn the tide of battle." As Cale spoke, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. Magic? What madness lay entwined in those words? I had always thought of magic as fantasies spun by weary minds, not as a sword to wield in desperate times. Yet the threat encroaching on our lives weighed heavier than my disbelief, the need to protect those I loved surging within me. In that moment of overwhelming uncertainty, I caught Darian's gaze. "We can't do it alone," I murmured, and a silent understanding passed between us. Decisions made in the dark aren't always sound, but sometimes they are necessary. As the air buzzed with anticipation and fear, a chill swept through the crowd, shadows stretching and distorting beneath the twilight sky. Just then, a distant roar echoed from the woods, a sound so primal, so fierce, that it sent icy fingers creeping up my spine. I turned back towards the forest, dread churning in my gut as panic swept through the townsfolk once more. "What was that?" I breathed, eyes wide with comprehension. The sunset faded, cloaking the world in an overwhelming darkness that pressed down on us, the shadows of imminent danger looming ever closer. As a figure emerged from the depths of the trees, the realization struck: whatever it was that awaited us was no longer hidden in the tales of nightmares, it had arrived. The villagers gasped, and a collective gasp of trepidation rippled through the crowd. And just as the first piercing scream sliced through the night, my heart sank. It was a scream of pure terror that shattered the thin veil of hope we had just begun to weave. The scream echoed, reverberating through the hollow of my chest and pulling me back into the harsh light of reality. Fear swept like a tidal wave through the villagers, and they scattered like leaves caught in a tempest. My heart raced as I scanned the faces around me, trying to grasp the looming terror that now held us in its grip. "Stay together." My father's voice rang out, but the very foundation of our unity trembled at the sound of approaching chaos. Cale moved swiftly, his silhouette cutting through the debris of uncertainty. "To the town square," he commanded, his voice uncompromising, and a part of me instinctively obeyed, like a moth drawn to a flickering flame. Darian, beside me, clenched my arm, his grip a mixture of concern and determination. "We can't just flee. We have to listen to him," I snapped, surprising even myself. "Yes, right. If we scatter, we'll be picked off one by one." With every effort, I pushed the panic down into the depths of my being. We navigated the chaos, weaving through the crowd of frantic souls who desperately sought shelter or help. As we reached the square, I could hardly breathe, the dense air punctuated by the rhythmic thud of my heartbeat. Cale raised an arm toward the approaching darkness. "We must defend this place. Gather whatever weapons you have." His firm resolve inspired a flicker of desperation within me, igniting a spark of courage not just in myself, but in those around. A few villagers began to run toward their homes, desperation morphing into determination as they collected tools and old swords, rusty and worn but still dripping with the history of battles long past. "Darian, help me," I urged, looking about for anything we could use. "We need to find weapons." "Mina," he said, his voice strained. "We're not trained for this. We can't even fight back." "Yes, we can," I retorted, my voice rising above the chaos. "We have to try. For our families." A moment of silence fell as he met my gaze, vulnerability glimmering behind his hazel eyes, but ultimately, he nodded, and we ripped through the crowd together, gathering anything that resembled a weapon. As I stumbled past men and women, wielding pitchforks and old blades, I caught sight of one of my neighbors, Mrs. Glynn, who was holding her young son tightly. The sight of her trembling form sent a pang of compassion through me, and in that instant, an unexpected kindness floated to the surface. "Mrs. Glynn," I called, rushing toward her. "You have to take him and hide. Find somewhere safe." Her eyes blurred with the weight of fear and gratitude. "But you, dear girl, you can't stay. This is my village too," I insisted, the steely resolve juxtaposing my rising dread. "Just go." Reluctant, she nodded and vanished into the thickening night. I forced myself to turn back to the square, adrenaline surging through me as I found Cale leading a handful of the braver villagers. "Listen," he shouted. "We don't know what awaits us, but we can't let it take our home or our families. Hold your ground." The booming footsteps crescendoed, the shadows elongating into a darkness deeper than night. I positioned myself next to Cale, clutching a crude blade I had found amongst the chaos, my fingers trembling around its hilt. "Stay close," he murmured, his deep voice a comfort amidst the approaching storm. For the first time, I noticed the hint of vulnerability beneath his confidence, as if he too was uncertain of what would come. Then, just as the primal snarling broke through the inky shadows, the figures silhouetted in the distance began to solidify into nightmarish shapes. A grotesque hound emerged, its eyes glowing like molten coals, and behind it, figures draped in dark cloaks emerged, their faces obscured by shadows, driving fear deeper into my heart. "What are they?" Darian whispered, the tremor in his voice betraying his brave facade. I glanced at Cale, who stood unwavering. "Creatures of Nyreth," he responded, steady but clearly distraught. "They can smell your fear." My heart thudded heavily in my chest as fear choked the air around us. The creatures advanced, crimson. flames flickering from their mouths, its fiery breath hungry to consume us all. At that moment, dread pooled within me, suffocating any vestige of hope I had managed to muster. I locked eyes with Darien, and for an agonizing second, I felt the world around me narrow into a tunnel of despair. Then, with an eerily synchronizing roar, the creatures leaped forward as one. Their eyes glinted in the dim light, and in that instant, dread morphed into resilience. We had to fight, our hearts surged as one. I tightened my grip on the hilt of my weapon, my resolve melding with Kale's unwavering determination. As chaos erupted around us, it became clear this was only the beginning of a battle that would demand everything we had. And as I turned to face the coming darkness, a chilling thought plagued my mind: if we fell here tonight, it wouldn't simply be the end for us. It would signify the beginning of something far worse. Something I never could have anticipated. The air thickened with the raw scent of fear and flame as the creatures lunged, and time itself seemed to stretch impossibly. My heartbeat thudded against my ribs like a frantic drum, echoing the chaos that erupted around me. Every instinct begged me to flee, to turn my back on the terror thrumming so close, but there was no escape. Standing alongside my neighbors, we formed a barricade of shared determination. "Hold the line!" Kale shouted again, his voice cutting through the din of screams and growls. He stepped forward, wielding a sword he had snagged from an elderly villager who barely knew how to wield it. The light from the torches flickered against his determined face as he charged into the fray, drawing the attention of the closest threat. The beast snarled loudly, and I watched as Kale met its fiery gaze, a moment of understanding pulsing between them before he swung his weapon. "Darien, now!" I shouted, my pulse quickening as I sensed the monstrous energy shifting. My friend was at my side, still gripped by fear, but the fire in his eyes ignited. Together, we stepped forward, gripping our makeshift weapons tightly, fighting to find our place within the tempest. A creature lunged towards Darien, its maw wide, flames curling hotly from its throat. I screamed, rushing forward without thinking. With sheer will, I swung my blade, a misguided and desperate attempt that barely grazed its thick fur. All I could think was to protect him, and as I spun, my breath was caught at the sight of his steely resolve. "Mina, stay back!" he shouted, fear evident in every syllable as he grappling with another beast. But in the chaos of my own terror, I felt a flicker of something else rising: anger. Anger at the way we had let darkness seep into our lives. Anger at the thought of losing everything we held dear. I wasn't planning to go quietly. Not when our village stood on the brink of collapse. With a fierce growl, one of the hides erupted, flinging me backward, and I tumbled to the ground. The creature was momentarily distracted by the chaos surrounding it, and as I caught my breath, I locked eyes with Darien once more. Each glance combined with an unspoken promise: we would fight together, no matter the odds. "Get to the fountain!" Kale yelled, aiming to pull us toward a central point where perhaps we could better defend ourselves. With effort, I pushed myself back onto my feet and charged toward him, my chest burning with both fear and adrenaline. But as I approached the fountain, I realized we were surrounded. The hounds circled ominously, their burning eyes piercing the shadowy darkness, and panic began crashing over me like a wave. "What do we do?" I whispered, the edge of despair creeping into my voice as the glow of the flames illuminated the terror in everyone's eyes. Just then, from the corner of my vision, I saw Mrs. Glyn's son, barely a few steps away, trying to find his mother. He stood there, helpless, in a world that had suddenly become a nightmare. My heart twisted. I should have told her to take him further away. Why hadn't I thought of that? And in that moment of realization, hope slipped through my fingers. "Mina, focus!" Darien urged, his voice steadying me. "We can't let them scatter us." I closed my eyes, drawing upon the strength I hoped I possessed, and took a step toward the boy, ready to pull him back to safety. But my movement suddenly froze when a roar filled the air, and from the darkness, another creature emerged, this one larger and more imposing than the others. A palpable wave of dread surged through the crowd. "Everyone, retreat!" Kale shouted, and for a brief moment, the villagers hesitated, confusion lacing their movements. "Stay with me!" I yelled at Darien, panic clawing at my insides. It would be a dire moment, one where a single choice could alter the course of what would happen next. I turned back to Kale, who was shaking slightly as he faced the daunting foe. "We can't." Cale's voice cracked. He was all too aware of the risks of retreat. "We need to make a stand. No one is getting left behind." I felt the ground shift beneath us, as grizzled faces transformed into fearful ones around me, rising tides of uncertainty swelling. But before I could pull myself together, before I could even process the horror spooling out in front of us like a gauzy thread pulling tighter, the truth struck me like a lightning bolt. We were not just fighting for our village's survival. We were unveiling a darkness that could swallow us all whole, and just as I became aware of the enormity of our plight, a cacophony broke out from the opposite side of the square. Out of the shadows emerged another figure, cloaked and desperate, weaving their way through the frenzy, carrying a banner. "Help is coming!" they cried, their voice strained, almost melodic amidst the chaos, and for the briefest moment a glimmer of hope pierced through the black clouds that enveloped us, but before I could fully register their words, a shattering scream split the air, a sound that echoed with finality. My heart sank as I turned to look, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. The deep shadow of the primary creature bore down on me, its gaze fixated, as I finally understood the haunting truth: we weren't merely facing beasts of myth. This night would reveal far more than we ever anticipated, and I was left trembling, realizing how delicately the threads of our fates were woven together. The air pulsed with an electric tension as the figure edged toward us, the banner swirling like a flag of defiance meant to rally our fading spirits. My stomach twisted in knots. Help was coming, yet the creatures surrounded us, a tempest of snarls and sparks that clawed at the edges of our resolve. The cry of the unknown hero hung in the air like a promise, but I could scarcely find breath to cling to it. Darian's grip tightened around my arm, pulling me closer as if my proximity could ward off the hellish flames licking their way through the square. "Stay with me, Mina. We won't let it break us." I could see in his eyes the flickering flame of determination rising, even as shadows loomed over us casting a curtain of despair. But then the creature roared again, a sound so primal it shattered any semblance of courage I fought to maintain. My muscles tensed, and illusions of safety evaporated faster than mist on a hot day. I exchanged a glance with Cale, desperate to glean some clarity from the storm brewing in his soul. He stood, shoulders squared, face aflame with resolve that almost mirrored the infernos training their sights on us. "Breath of flame!" The command exploded from the creature's maw, curling like molten fury through the air. We ducked low as the blistering heat washed over us, close enough to feel the singe but not enough to touch. The moment of distraction opened a chasm of chaos as villagers scattered like leaves before a tempest, and I felt terror sink in deeper than before, planting seeds of doubt within my heart. "Get to the well!" Cale shouted into the swirling madness. "Use the water to douse, it can't survive." As if sensing the shift, the larger beast turned its gaze away momentarily, and something within me ignited at his words. We darted together through the swirling chaos, shards of hope refracted into desperate prayers floating in my mind. I could hear whispers of others rallying, their courage clinging like cobwebs in the corners of my thoughts. "Mina!" Darian shouted, breaking the spell of my focus as I faltered, catching sight of Mrs. Glynn still searching for her boy. A small figure clutched at her skirts, eyes wide with fear. "We have to go." In that blink, decisions hung in the balance, a choice between honor and instinct. "Let us take them," I urged, and with a fierce nod that echoed our shared conviction, we darted back. We grabbed the woman's hand, but the peaceful village had unraveled into a nightmare grasping at our throats, and the creatures roared, hungry for despair. As we tore back toward the fountain, I shouted to my neighbors, rallying anyone who would listen. "We can douse the flames. Find water, together." My voice rose above the din, somehow a tether to sanity amidst the storm. But then, it happened, a flash of heat that surged like a wave, and from behind, one of the creatures lunged with rabid frenzy. I barely had time to react as it pinned me against the cobblestones, claws scraping against my armor. My heart raced like thunder as I stared down the gaping maw, darkness pooling in its bottomless depths. Instinct kicked in. I cupped my hands in front of me, conjuring every ounce of willpower I could muster. "No!" I screamed, pushing against the weight of despair, shattering the threshold of fear like glass. With sheer desperation, I screamed to give voice to the hope that felt small and far away, and then, I felt a tug. Darien had lifted his sword high, bringing it down in a dramatic arc toward the creature. It roared as the blade found purchase against its flesh, and in that moment, my fear twisted into a wild surge of rage and determination. The creature recoiled, and I felt weightless for a heartbeat before it lunged again. But this time, I was ready. With a guttural shout, I too thrust my blade toward it, fueled by the spirit of all that we lost thus far. Sparks flew, and suddenly it was not just fear that bound us together but a fierce rebellion against the encroaching darkness, and just as the tide of battle shifted, I caught sight of the cloaked figure once more, their eyes wide, as if searching for something or someone amongst the chaos. To the well. Fetch water, they cried, a strange urgency coloring their voice. Hope sparked anew, and a renewed sense of purpose coursed through me like wildfire. But just as we turned, sprinting toward the well, what had flickered against the shadows unfolded with a heart-stopping revelation. The cloaked figure was not just anyone but my long-lost brother, Amon, thought dead in a long-forgotten battle. Amon? My voice cracked under the weight of disbelief as my heart threatened to seize. The chaos swirled and spun, each heartbeat accelerating like a drum, and just as quickly, the world began to tilt once more, the looming reality of the creatures fanning out like smoke around us. Stay back, he yelled, reaching for me, but before I could process what unfolded, the creature reared back, defiance brewing in its hellish gaze, as if sensing the spiritual crack that had just formed in our defenses. A low growl echoed through the square, a sound that demanded fear not just from the villagers but from my very soul. The fabric of our world was spiraling close to a critical point, and I was left teetering on the edge, soaring high with impossible hope yet faced with an impending doom. Everything we had fought was for nothing if darkness consumed us now. As chaos danced around us, my heartbeat thudded in a frantic rhythm, caught between the sparking electricity of hope and the trembling echoes of despair. Amon, the name fell from my lips like a whispered prayer. The weight of his presence felt both unreal and grounding in a world turned upside down. My brother, long thought to have vanished into the abyss of war, stood mere paces away, bathed in an otherworldly glow amidst the suffocating gloom. Mina! Amon shouted again, his voice raw against the din. Even as the half-formed shadows of the creatures swirled, seeking to reclaim their hold on our fates, it was he who anchored me in this maelstrom. We need water. They fear it. His urgency connected like a lifeline threaded between time, snapping the hesitation that stilled us. Together, I urged Darien, tugging him toward my brother, where the imminent danger felt suddenly softer in contrast to the revelation before me. Amon's presence rekindled something primordial, a force that cut through the fear like a knife through fog. The coldness of ink-black despair clung to the corners of my heart but now dimmed against the warmth of family, of home, a concept I feared had evaporated like mist. From the fountain, Kale's voice cut through the growing chaos, a rallying cry resonating within our shared purpose. It's deep enough, we can fill containers. He fought his way through the crowd, channeling strength as he gestured toward our only hope, the fountain at the square's center, which we might yet defend against the onslaught. I could see villagers galvanizing, pushing past the weight of fear to form a phalanx around Amon, who was now flanked by Darien and me. Here? I called to Mrs. Glynn, who still clung to her son. Find anything that can hold water. She nodded, her determination igniting a fire within me. The weight of the world bore down, yet together we forged ahead, feet pounding against the cobblestones as fire met water in a deafening symphony. Amon and I connected, exchanging glances filled with wordless recognition that bound us tighter through the storm. The fountain glimmered with promise, but the air crackled dangerously, reminding me of the flames that threatened to engulf us. As we neared the fountain, a roar erupted behind us. It reverberated through my bones, shaking the very core of our resolve. One of the creatures had tracked our movements, relentless in its pursuit, the embodiment of nightmares given flesh. Protect them! Amon yelled, slicing into the air with his blade as if it were an extension of himself, empowering every breath with the same fierce spirit I remembered from our childhood. I barely had time to register his presence beside me when I turned, ready to join the fray. Darien clenched my shoulder, a silent reminder that we were not alone, that the battle, while tumultuous, bound us as one. With wild abandon, I unleashed my energy, forcing the blade toward the creature's snapping jaws. We struck together, a synchronicity born from adversity, spurred by the love and memories we shared, each thrust an homage to our younger selves hidden beneath layers of grief and turmoil. Don't look back. Kale's voice rang out, coursing with authority. As I fought, panting and grappling with the weight of our collective fears, I realized strength flowed not only through brute force but also through connection. The spirit of those fighting at our side infused each blow. We were a circle, a line of warriors parrying against the encroaching night, yet the creature was relentless. It peeled away the veil of hope. Each round of our offense steered us closer to the brink. We won't last much longer, I gasped, drawing closer to Amon after pushing back the beast. I felt that familiar pull, the bond that remained unscathed even through years of silence and absence, that when Amon met my gaze, and in that exact moment, understanding unfurled in the air, a thread of history woven tightly into the fabric of the present. Mina, he began, breathless, the urgency spiraling once more. I have something you must know, something important. About why I'm here. But before he could finish, the creature unleashed its howl, a sound that clawed at the edges of sanity. A torrent of fire erupted once more, engulfing the fountain with a hellish glow. Time seemed to fracture. I could see through the flames enveloping us, the villagers trailing toward safety, the water, once vibrant and hopeful now clouded with uncertainty. A crack echoed from the heavens, a thunderclap that split the fabric of the night, and I looked up just in time to see a storm swell on the horizon, dark clouds rolling in, banishing the cacophony of fire. Fueled by renewed energy, I flung a shard of ice I had conjured earlier, veering with certainty toward the beast, yet in that unleashing moment, the world tilted again. Amon! I screamed, yearning for the connection, but the air felt too thick. The creatures surged forward, their shadows lengthening as they moved to attack again, the promise of hope slipping through my fingers. In the next instant, the skies opened, drenching the ground with rain that poured like forgotten tears. I stood paralyzed, the healing, cold water mingling with warmth on my cheeks, but it was not just the rain flooding our surroundings, it was the chaos of life, the echoes of laughter from long-buried memories. The stark reality of the present was illuminated by the unwavering strength of those beside me. And it was then, watching everything I held dear hang in the balance, that I stumbled upon the realization some secrets buried in the past were about to unravel with consequences far beyond what we had ever conceived. The rain fell mercilessly, its steady rhythm dousing the flames that had held our fears captive. As the droplets cascaded down, the contrast between the suffocating heat and the refreshing coolness allowed for sweet glimpses of relief. But alongside it, dread began to claw at my chest, fueled by what Amon had nearly revealed before chaos swallowed his words. Something important. A revelation. The thought hung in the air like the fragments of the past that refused to settle. Mina, look out! Kale shouted, wrenching me from the reverie of my thoughts as he intercepted oncoming shadows with the precision of practice. I ducked and swung my blade, its presence felt foreign yet empowering in my hands, breaking the stony silence as we fought to reclaim our lingering hope. But the downpour had also summoned a new dread, not of the creatures that threatened our lives, but of the uncertainty surrounding Amon. Why had he returned just now? In a battle of survival, only a frantic desire to protect silenced the wild thud of my heart, even as my mind raced ahead, bolstered by anticipation but crushed under the weight of unknown truths. The creatures stumbled, disoriented by the unexpected rain, and it was the moment we needed. We push! I called, rallying the group around me, a visceral call to action dominant above the splatter of rainfall. Darian burst forward, each stride a testament to the fierce spirit that burned within him. For our home! He yelled, igniting the flames of courage as we broke through their defenses. Echoes of courage mixed with the rising wind filled us, amplifying our efforts. Each swing was a release, a scattering of fear as we fought against the shadows and the residents we promised to protect. But within the glossy sheen of victory, the shadows still slithered, and in moments when I stole glances at Amon, I could see familiar traces of exhaustion etching deeper into his frame. Mina! He called between labored breaths. His eyes were blazing, revealing a hint of the boy I grew up with, yet sorrow clung to him like the remnants of the flames we doused. I wondered if he bore deeper scars than the ones visible upon his skin. Tell me! I shouted over the clashing sounds of our battle, desperation punctuating my plea as I carved my way toward him, cutting through whatever remained of the churning shadows, and then, almost imperceptibly, amidst the clamor of battle, I caught a flicker, a movement off to the left. A shadow tried to slip away from the fight, weaving through the chaos, deeper into the crowd of villagers struggling to flee. Time unraveled, and my heart twisted at the implication. No? My voice trembled, a desperate plea waited with the fear of what the shadow might unveil. Noticing my distraction, Kale turned to follow my gaze. Mina, focus! He urged sharply, countering a creature's strike. But I was already in motion, a reckless spirit guiding me forward as I darted toward the fading figure. Whoever it was, my instincts screamed, they held knowledge. Knowledge that could tether our stark realities to the hidden threads of fate. Mina, come back! Darian shouted after me, but I was beyond listening. I could not let this shadow slip away, not when so much hung in the balance. I weaved around the frantic bodies, warriors and villagers alike, each breath a testament to resilience and the relentless push of survival. The rain amplified my determination as it soaked through my hair and weighed down my garments. Each heartbeat drummed like a war chant against the pounding of shadows, just as the figure turned, revealing a frail visage cloaked in worry. I knew. Recognition struck like a lightning bolt. It was Old Man Thorn, the village seer whose words had sculpted my childhood dreams into fables that haunted my sleep. He stumbled, fear and urgency clouding his eyes, yet beneath the surface lay a glint of something else. Was it resolve? Had he come burdened with answers? I called to him, forcing my way through the battle's grip. Thorn! Wait! My voice strained against the roars that filled the air, and the closeness of the dark tide rippled beneath my skin. I slipped past a swarm of chaos, every instinct battling me to turn back toward safety. But the urgency in Thorn's eyes rekindled something unyielding within me, the belief that perhaps I, too, could control fate. Do not leave! I begged as I finally reached him, wheezing from the exertion that saturated my lungs with the taste of fear. Mina, he rasped, reaching for me with trembling hands, his grip frail yet fierce. I feared you might come to this. The shadows do not hunt without reason. They seek something of immense power, something that lies within you. The words carved into my ears like a dirge, fracturing the reality I once clung to. What? What do you mean? I pressed, my heart racing with newfound urgency, every fiber of my being straining to preemptively fend off the terrible revelations I sensed lurking just beyond reach. Before he could respond, the ground trembled, shifting, a monstrous creature emerging from the depths of the shadows, its wretched howl vibrating through the air. I stole a glance back. Amon, Kale, Darian, they were fighting, but they wouldn't know what power I might harbor. Our fate in this moment dangled precariously, strained under the weight of truth and the monstrous realities that pressed closer still. Thorn, please! I shouted, desperate. I could feel the heat of battle thrumming at my back, but the seer's gaze was unyielding, flickering with both fear and purpose. Mina, you must understand, he implored again, urgency lacing every breath. You're the key. And if they capture you, a shudder rippled through the ground, cutting through the doorway of his hushed fears. All the warmth washed away beneath a wave of cold dread, and in that moment, I realized, perhaps unwittingly, that the true battle was only beginning, and my connection to Amon was now more critical than ever, yet fraught with uncertainty and dark revelations yet to unfold. Before I could wrap my mind around the weight of his words, the earth trembled again, and darkness surged toward us, anticipating my next move, and I braced myself for a reality where everything might forever change. The thunder rumbled ominously overhead as we stood at the precipice of devastation. I was acutely aware of the thrumming hearts of my companions behind me, each pulse echoing inside the chasm of my uncertainty. Old Man Thorn's words hung heavy in the air between us, saturating my fading resolve with their magnitude. You're the key. In that moment of panic, my instincts kicked in, a battle cry rising unbidden from my throat. We have to fight! I yelled, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As the monstrous creature pushed its way from the blackened depths, I could see its monstrous form coiling, glistening with wet shadows that twisted into nightmarish shapes. My hand tightened around the familiar grip of the blade, the metallic coolness grounding me even as fear loomed ahead. Retreat! Fall back! I heard Kale shout, urgency fueling his voice as he pushed against the creature that loomed like a colossal shadow bent on destruction. But though my heart raced with terror, a flame ignited within, mingling with the fear. I was not just fighting for my life, I was fighting for answers and for a truth that the cosmos had intertwined with mine. As if sensing my defiance, the creature howled, its voice a cacophony of anguish and fury that sent ripples of dread through the air, clashing with the desperate resolve of our beleaguered party. I glanced back at Thorn. He looked like a wisp of smoke, fragile yet powerful. The flicker of knowledge in his eyes determined the path, and I could not let it extinguish before I unraveled more of my fate. Together, I rallied, glancing over my shoulder before rushing forward, slicing clean through the air, a thread of flame in a storm. I could see Amon, battered yet unyielding, carving his own way through the chaos, his eyes briefly meeting mine, laden with urgency and an unspoken bond. He, too, was wrestling against forces in the fray, possessed by the knowledge that what lay ahead was not merely a test of physical strength but a battle for something far more precious. With every duel, I fought, forcing the shadows back, but their relentless tide was relentless. Each clash of steel rang like an urgent bell, shaking me from the cocoon of naivety I hadn't known I was wrapped in. My heart sank with each step I took deeper into the fray, a dread settling in that this fight was only a precursor to something unfathomable. Then, beneath the menacing howl of the creature, I felt a piercing cry shatter the noise, a cry laced with familiar anguish. Dark realization hit me like a thunderclap. Darian! I shrieked, panic stealing the breath from my lungs. Through the chaos, I caught sight of him, grappling with a shadow as his strength was seemingly fading, the turmoil threatening to claim him. In that moment, a smattering of hope ignited. I raced toward him, weaving through the calamity with fierce determination. "I'm coming!" I called, my voice barely piercing the storm of noise. Each step felt monumental, my destiny entwined with his, a truth hidden deep within my battles but connected more intricately than even I understood. But before I could reach him, the weight of shadows shifted, draping themselves in darkness, as if stalking their prey. My heart constricted at the sight of the creature tightening its grip around Darian, and in that instant, a primal roar of anguish broke free from my core, a call to the deeper magic I felt stirring within. "Darian!" I screamed, tears blurring my vision as desperation surged. "You can't give in. We're stronger than this." His eyes met mine, a constellation of fear and defiance enmeshed with the hope I'd briefly bequeathed. The connection between us was electric, and a flicker of that bond ignited anew, pouring a yearning power into the air, fighting against the overwhelming darkness. The shadows surrounding him wavered, hesitant as I leaped into the fray, my blade singing through the rain like a siren's call. With one decisive thrust, I cut through the darkness, entangling him, my heart steadfast despite the wall of overwhelming fear. Light threaded into existence at the edge of my consciousness. I could feel it radiating from the core of my being, and with it, I summoned every trace of strength I carried to push the shadows back. "All of you!" I shouted urgently, the magic swirling in the damp air awakening with fervor. "Join me!" Amon, realizing our hopes melded, surged forward alongside Kale and the others. In that moment, the spirits of all those who had fallen fought beside us, igniting an unexpected fury within. As our weapons melded with our voices, a pulse emanated from Darian's grasp as he fought to stand, a wave of unity cascading like a tidal force against the encroaching night. But just as we began to push back against the creature, a sudden gale erupted, twisting the storm into a tempestuous cyclone that howled with rage. My heart plummeted as flashes of light surrounded us, illuminating figures that appeared from the shadows draped in cloaks of secrecy and whispers of time. My breath caught at the sight of the Makadra of the lost, their expressions a confluence of pain and power. Old Man Thorn's eyes widened in horror. "No? The veil should never open here. Mina!" He gasped, a torment thrown in with urgency. "You mustn't look. They are searching for you." But it was too late. Their depths met mine, eyes like abyssal wells inviting me into their truth, a heart-stopping revelation that threatened to engulf my reality. The lines blurred, between friend and foe, light and dark, and with that collision came an understanding so profound it shattered the battle around us. In that visceral moment, time rewrote itself as I felt the focus shift. The shadows were no longer my only adversary. I glimpsed fleeting scenes, fractured memories, disjointed truths, a swirling legacy entangled in the fate of the realm we fought to save. As my heart raced with unbidden understanding, darkness surged anew, clawing at us as I stood frozen, locked in a gaze with the sentinels of fate. A confrontation was inevitable, and the realization washed over me like the unforgiving rains. Nothing would ever be the same again, and in the hollowness of my vacillating strength, I prepared for the insurmountable battle that lay ahead, trembling under the weight of revelations that were intertwined yet unknown. A single question echoed in the tempest of chaos: what if the key to defeating them lay within me, and what if I had to embrace the darkness to wield the light? A chilling howl rose as the darkness twisted further, claiming dominion, and against the haunting backdrop of uncertainty, I prepared to either emerge victorious or surrender to the ever-looming void before me. The storm raged on, a living entity that reflected the tumult within me. The howling winds echoed the chaos of my heart, where fear clawed at my insides and hope flickered like a fragile candle in the tempest. I stood at the threshold of something unfathomable, surrounded by shadows and sentinels, the battlefield stretching out before me like an ancient tapestry woven with threads of fate. Mina. Focus. Kale's voice cut through the tumult, grounding me momentarily. His eyes shone with a fierce determination that anchored me, a lifeline amidst the encroaching darkness. We need to push them back together, don't let them get inside your head. Together, I echoed, the mantra weaving into my thoughts like an incantation. But even as I clutched my blade, glistening now with a spectrum of emotions from fear to raw courage, I felt the shadows swirling ever closer, eager to shatter our unity, to isolate me within a labyrinth of doubt. I turned back to the looming figures whose mere presence distorted the fabric of reality. Each one bore semblances of the lost familiar faces warped by time and despair, their eyes wells of sorrow and rage. What do you want? I shouted into the storm, my voice trembling but unwavering. Why are you here? The air prickled and thickened as they surged forward, their voices a haunting symphony. You think you can wield light without knowing darkness? One figure whispered, her voice like velvet but laced with truth. You are part of this cycle, Mina. The blood of the lost runs through your veins. Dread coiled around my heart, squeezing until I gasped for breath. No? I protested, mind racing, recalling whispered legends and hushed warnings. I want to become like you. With each refusal, shadows lunged closer, eager to exploit my inner turmoil. But just as despair crowded in, I felt Darian's hand wrap around mine, grounding me yet again. His grip was firm, and I could see the defiance sparking in his eyes. They are trying to break you, he reassured, voice steady. We won't let them. He was right. The warmth of connection surged through me, igniting the embers of resolve that lay deep within my heart. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I focused on the bond of our shared purpose. You're right. Our light is stronger than the darkness. I shouted, shattering the grip of fear. With our united voices, we called upon those luminous threads of truth that intertwined our fates. Amon, Kale, the others all lending their strength. Together, we stepped forward, our weapons raised, forming a barrier against the impending void. Let us show them what we are. I shouted. With a flick of my wrist, my blade shimmered, absorbing the energy of our resolve as a blinding light erupted from our collective heart. The shadowy spectres recoiled, their faces etched with surprise and anger, and for a fleeting moment, we held them at bay, a wall of unity standing firm against their encroachment. But just as our bravery seemed to shift the tide, the winds howled more ferociously, and a larger shadow swept into view, the creature, emboldened, fueled by the turmoil brewing in our souls. Mina. Thorn's voice cut through the haze, an urgent plea that reverberated within me. You must confront the truth that lies within you, deny it and the darkness will consume you. I'm trying. I shouted back, battling against the force that threatened to render me powerless. But as I grasped the creeping shadows, I understood. To face them, I had to confront that which I feared most, the darkness within myself. In that moment of clarity, the words of the lost echoed through me. I was a nexus, an interwoven tale of light and shadow, a vessel for the historian's conflict where ignorance met understanding. I took a deep breath, letting the swirling fear fade into a quiet acceptance. The realization hit me like a wave: I did not have to reject this darkness, perhaps I could wield it, transform it into strength. The memories of the lost whispered ancient truths yearning to be reclaimed, begging for recognition. As the creature broke free from the shadows, the tempest formed into a swirling vortex around us. I took a step forward, not in retreat but embracing the battle within. If darkness is what it takes, then let us dance. My heart raced as I felt the shadows oscillate, no longer intimidating but an integral part of the battle ahead, yet, just as I began to channel the blend of light and darkness within me, a thunderous roar erupted from the creature, the storm intensifying, pulling at my sanity. The sentinels of lost souls shrieked in despair, their hands reaching towards me, beckoning me to remember a forgotten memory imploding within me like a fragile crystal. Mina. I heard Darian's voice turn desperate, reminding me of the connection we battled to preserve. You have to decide now. Face the truth. But just as I summoned the courage to confront my fears, a piercing shriek echoed above the howling winds. I turned, eyes widening in disbelief as the creature lunged, and a ripple of panic shadowing my heart right behind it, an unexpected ally emerged, crashing into the fray. Mother? I gasped, disbelief mixing with an unfamiliar swell of hope. But the rage in her eyes was matched only by the creature as she stood tall, a spark of light against my darkest hour. Could this moment tilt the balance in our favor, or was it the beginning of something more terrifying than I could imagine? As the battle erupted anew, a fresh wave of uncertainty crashed over me, and I braced myself for the imminent storm. The lines between light and dark blur once more, and the truth of my heritage loomed heavy, ready to unveil itself. The chaos swirled around me like a tempest as I stood at the edge of an impossible battlefield, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and familiarity. The revelation of my mother standing among the epochs of shadows reshaped everything I thought I knew. Mina! She screamed, urgency cracking through her voice as she faced the massive creature, determination etched into her every feature. You have to remember. Remember what? I shouted back, trying to push through the confusion and grasping for something deeper. What is this? I had to come back. You must embrace your true power. Her words sliced through the howls of the fray. My head spun as I reflected on all the tales my parents had spun about loss, about an unbreakable bond that tethered families, stories layered with emotion but speckled with secrets. The creature roared, an embodiment of everything dark and twisted, but my mother stood undaunted, poised between terror and defiance. The shadows merged, swirling around her, but she was radiant against the dark, a lighthouse amidst a storm. Then, it struck me, I was not alone in this. I felt Amon's presence, Darian's strength, and Kale's fierce determination backing me in this tumult, their spirits woven like threads through a tapestry, fortifying my resolve. With every pulse of battle I could sense the challenges of our ancestors stirring within me, a whisper of something long forgotten yet innately part of who I was. Together, I rallied, feeling the weight of their presence surge through me, granting strength to my voice. As the shadows coalesced, I turned to look at everyone around me. The ally spirits of our past were watching, hoping, pleading for redemption. Embrace your darkness, I shouted, and I felt a well of energy surge within, igniting the shadows that wound around me, drawing fingerprints of power from both sides of the spectrum. Using that energy, I thrust forward, calling forth the kind of magic I never believed I could be capable of. A shimmering light entwined with shadow cascaded from my fingertips, forming a protective barrier against the onslaught of the creatures surrounding us. We were not mere victims in this fight, we were warriors. Love and courage amped my strength even as time folded into itself, and in that moment everything intensified. My mother stepped beside me, fire reflected in her gaze as we raised our weapons in unison. She channeled a strength I never knew she possessed. If we stand together, they will not overpower us. Her words echoed with a fierce strength, drawing every ounce of my ability. Our duality married the shadows and light, swirling into an essence that surged, obliterating the fear that had tethered my heart all night. A piercing scream broke the air, reverberating against the clash of metal on metal as Amon and the others finally caught up, forming a unified front. Mina, now! He called. I looked at him, and with a single breath, I unleashed the torrent of energy that spiraled around us, creating a kaleidoscope of hues. The interweaving of darkness liberated from within, uniting against the creature's rage. The colossal beast, momentarily taken aback, shrieked in agony as the raw force of conflicting powers permeated the air. I didn't just fight to save my village, I fought to claim my identity, to confront the shadows lurking in my history and dance with them rather than hide. We were the sum of so many faces, lost heroes, families crossed, battles unfurled across lifetimes, each piece stitching together to form the very essence of what made us strong. Meanwhile, Kale swung alongside us, drawing strength from my mother's bravery. He fought against the attentions of the shadowy figure not far from us, the fearsome embodiment of the wrathful creature. "This ends now," he yelled, igniting flames born of hope and reflection that dashed against darkness and filled the air with warm light of validation of our belief. Shadows shuddered, and the oppressive sense of despair began to crack, even as it still sought to consume us, and that's when a bolt of realization struck. If we could embrace both pain and joy, despair and strength, we could become something greater than the shadows would ever allow. The lost souls began to merge with our own, an alliance forged within the very fabric of our past, revealing a direction, a purpose that vibrated with raw energy. The truth surged like a tidal wave within me, washing away every fragment of doubt. "I am the key," I shouted into the chaotic air, and the torrent of shadows recoiled. "And you will not take what we have built." I felt the rush of memories flooding through me as I combined our powers into one soaring surge, one unified call, transforming everything into a purifying light and energy that wrapped around the very being of the creature and pulled it back. My mother, Amon, Darian, and Kale shouted alongside me, their voices merging into a deafening crescendo that rang through the air like a mighty battle cry. I could feel the life of the village tightening around us, binding us together even amidst the storm as the power surged. Transforming darkness into light, we struck with a force that channeled every ounce of love, every grief unspent. The creature howled, a sound of anguish mixed with disbelief, as the ground trembled in protest. "Now," I called, lifting my weapon high and thrusting it forward as every ounce of courage poured from me into the command, joining with the magic unleashed to encase the shadows. Light encapsulating the darkness spun like a dance until it ignited a vivid explosion, the sheer force of our hope blossoming into existence. Then, as the clash echoed off the distant hills, the creature unleashed its final roar, unraveling its essence into the vast expanse of night consumed by the radiance of our unity. Silence followed, a hush that felt surreal and weightless, as the storm faded and clarity returned. I found myself gasping, the kaleidoscope of light settling and revealing my companions around me. Their faces reflected both relief and disbelief as they turned to me, unguent with raw emotion that felt everything: terror, hope, acceptance, and most importantly love. And there, beneath the vast canopy of twilight, we stood free, the crushing weight of our burdens momentarily lifted, a lineage finally acknowledged, tangled histories reckoned with light. Perhaps that was why the truth had endured. Each shadow, no matter how dark, bore the potential to reveal radiant landscapes intertwining futures. In that moment, I knew my journey was only beginning, the scars of the past no longer a burden but a legacy I would carry with pride. Together, I whispered, looking deep into each of their eyes, feeling the warmth of a newfound connection, as something deep and ancient cradled our hearts. And in the pulse of shared breath, I understood victory was not simply claimed in vanquishing foes but in confronting the whole entirety of ourselves, navigating both darkness and light, threading new tales in which we sang our laughter and grief. Through the depths of despair and darkness, we found our unity. We were the essence of hope, and together we could forge a future, glowing bright beyond the shadows. As stars twinkled above, the finality of our battle washed over me. In this embrace of truth and understanding, I grasped the possibility that we could truly rewrite the narratives written upon our souls. And every tear shed in the shadows had ignited a light, I murmured, from that moment until the end of time.